Zhang is the director of the Center for China Studies and also from the Department of Sociology at the State University of New York, Buffalo State University. He's really a very famous scholar in the study of suicide and has published a lot of key research using data from China, the US, and around the world on the social and cultural effects on suicide. He won the President's Award for Excellence in Teaching in 2002, the SUNY Chancellor's Award for Excellence in Faculty Service in 2005, the Buffalo State President's Award for Excellence in Research in 2007, the SUNY Chancellor's Award for Excellence in Scholarship in 2012, and he was appointed as Distinguished Professor in 2020. So Professor Zhang, thank you so much for coming to talk to us today. Please start the interview.
Thank you very much. Thanks for the beautiful introduction. I'm also very happy to be here today to share with you my research. And I hope all of you are sociology majors, at least a sociology faculty member. So we have some commonalities. I usually do two types of studies and my publications for the two areas, sociology and public health. So today we'll focus on the sociology and sociological theories. And earlier I talked to Professor Karani about the topic you might be interested in. And I said, since all of you are sociology majors, I want to discuss this topic to emphasize the importance and significance of sociology in social science, so that for those of you who are interested in studying sociology, are more interested in sociology, and those students of you who are still deciding what to study at Hong Kong U, you can choose sociology. So that's the basic idea, but I want to use suicidality and suicide behavior as a vehicle to talk about how people do sociological studies and how we conduct research to study the risk factors of suicide and the prevention measures on suicide. So sociology is a social science, right? And also Auguste Comte, a French philosopher, was the father of the sociology, he coined the word sociology. So he started the sociology. The beginning of sociology is by him, he coined the word. And according to Auguste Comte, sociology, the study of social science, society, sociology is nothing but social physics. It's a science, it's a social science. And many people who do not study sociology think that the sociology is a soft science, although not much evidence, like a philosophy, actually no. So for a very real sociologist, we have to focus on the evidence, empirical studies. So if physics has the variables as movement and mass and speed, things like that, and sociology treated society as objective observation, social variables also are social facts. So that's the basic idea of sociology. So sociological theory. Sociology is different from other disciplines, such as public health, medical, and even history, communication, sometimes psychology. Sociology is a theoretical discipline. Many social science disciplines borrow sociological theories. If you go to other classes in Hong Kong U, communication, political science, and psychology, and communication, so things, they always mention sociological theories, because sociology is a theory-based discipline. In publications, every sociological paper, excuse me, every sociological paper, we need a theory as a foundation. The idea of the paper comes from theory, And the consequence, the end product of the paper is also theory. A sociological paper, if the sociological paper goes without theory, that sociological paper is not worth a lot. Not like medical journals. Medical journals publish very small papers, teeny tiny papers with impact factor a lot, over 10 or 20. But sociological papers do not have that much impact factor. No more than 5 or 4, so very few of them, because, so it's evidence-based, but we have to focus on theory. A sociological paper, if without a theory, is less significant, less meaningful, less important. Because we sociologists, we study social facts and observations, relationship between individuals and society. We found so many relations, but a lot of times, what we sociologists have found are common sense, right? If you do not publish the paper, they know. They can predict, right? No surprise, very few surprising findings, very few. Majority of them are common sense. But we still use sociology. Why? Because a hypothesis, a common sense, without being tested, you cannot be sure, you're not sure. You have to put in the data and test it, make sure that's a relationship, a correlation, right? Common sense must be tested. So that's why sociology must be based on theories. Without theory, sociological paper is almost nothing. So theory is important. But what is a theory? So simply speaking, theory is a summary. It's a statement of relations of different variables. Statement, a relationship of the 2 variables, right? And there are 3 characteristics of a good theory, according to my research. Number 1, okay, either induction or deduction. Okay, induction means that you have observations that generalize to the common theory, summary, that's induction. Deduction is that you have a theory, and you apply the theory downward to explain the observations. It's the 2 directions of theory, induction and deduction. The second point is that there are 2 major functions of a theory. One is production, the other is generalization. So a theory must be generalized, not only to this. You collect the data at Hong Kong U for Hong Kong U students, you find the correlations, okay, between the political opinions and their voting, things like that, for example, right? But can you apply the findings from Hong Kong U to off campus, to Hong Kong, to China, to the world? So that's what we should do, the generalizability. Predictability is that you can use the theory to predict the future. That's the usefulness of the theory. Why do you want a theory? We want to use the theory to predict. Once the world is so complex, so many different observations, we have to summarize that, we have to put them together, so that when we know the commonality, we can predict any other similar observations. So that's the characteristics of a good theory. And another important characteristics of theory is parsimony. Being parsimonious, parsimony, that's very important. For example, if you want to ask why do people get cancer, you will see that there are many reasons such as food, nutrition, and work stress, genetics, and so on and so forth, so many things. But you can list 100 reasons, 100 risk factors for cancer, for people to get cancer, but that's not good. We know all those things, but can you find a common, a very important core, okay, summary, very most important thing to summarize, to tell people that this is the theory, this is the most important thing for people to get cancer. Suicide too. Suicide. Many people say, there are so many different cases of suicide. The Hong Kong U students, and in Hong Kong, some people jump, right? Almost every month, there are some suicide cases. The suicide rate in Hong Kong is a little bit higher than the average in mainland China. So people, for each case, people talk about the reasons why. you summarize? Can you observe, put them all together? What's the major cause of suicide? What happened to all of them? If you can find that commonality of all suicide, that's a good theory. Parsimonious theory. Parsimonious theory means that a theory that uses the least number of variables to predict the highest amount of variance. Okay? The more variables, more predictors, not good. Okay? You all know so many predictors. Can you just use one or two, or best one as a predictor? Also, so no theory can explain 100% of variance. If your theory can explain about over 60% of the variance, that's good. So that's a theory. But while I'm talking, you can raise your hand and ask questions and interrupt me. That's okay. Interact. Okay, that's okay. So in my talk, I always ask my students and the audience to ask questions, make comments, and offer criticisms. Okay, that's okay. And I always tell my audience that you should ask challenging questions. If you like it, challenge me. Ask challenging questions and make a comment, severe comments, right? Negative comments. You can also do some criticism, smashing criticisms. Okay. Challenging questions, negative comments, and smashing criticisms. All welcome. Remember, you can take notes and get ready for your questions, and you can interrupt me. Okay, I'm okay. Methodology. Okay, social facts and only social facts, like physics, materials. Okay, observations, only the physical observations, nothing else. Ideology, speculation, no, that's not important. Only what we see, we can touch, we can experience. Correlations and causal relations. This is a very important concept in sociological research. In sociological research, we always find some correlations between variables. And sometimes misunderstood the correlations. Some people can always make a generalization of the causal relation of the two variables, right? Like in social science studies, poverty and crimes. And highly correlated. Okay, the poorer people, the more likely to commit crimes. And also education and the income. The more education you have, the higher income you have in the future. Correlations. Sociologists also always find correlations, but the point is a causal relation. A correlation is okay, we also know that, but a causal relation is more important. Okay? Between crimes and the poverty is a causal relation. Between education and income, always causal relation. Education causes high income. Okay, obviously some people say yes, but not always. So causal relation is in methodology very important. Study, very important area of study. Now we use the statistical software, so many different statistics we use. But theoretically speaking, so causal relation. But causal relation is better to be conducted by psychologists. Sociology, we use correlation studies, use a survey. Because to establish causal relation, we have to make sure that the independent variable happens before the dependent variable. In a survey, you are not sure independent variable happens before the dependent variable. So you cannot test the causal relation. But the psychologists, they can do it in the lab. They control and also extraneous variables, right? They control it. They can make sure the independent variable happen in the lab before they see the consequence. To make sure there are two tests to test the correlation, whether or not they have a causal relation. The first test is a preceding test. Okay, PREDING, precede independent variable must precede a dependent variable. That means independent variable must happen in time before dependent variable. Psychologists can do that in the lab, but with sociology we cannot do that. Survey cannot do that. Okay, and the second test is no third variable that causes both of them. If you can find a third variable that causes both independent variable and dependent variable, they highly correlated, not because the causal relation, because of the third variable that causes both of them. If you can find a third variable that causes both of them, you cannot establish the causal relation. So in order to establish a causal relation with the correlation, two tests, preceding test and a no third variable tests. We still have time to give you some example. The very simple example, all year round, 52 weeks, in a year, and in America, every state, they report the casualties, the death, drowning death in the swimming pool. They also have the number of ice cream consumption every week. They found that out of the 52 weeks, whenever the ice cream sale goes up, the death in the swimming pool also goes up. Okay, if you see ice cream consumption causes death in the swimming pool, that's ridiculous. Nobody believes that. Highly correlated, really highly correlated. Why? We have a third variable. The third variable is temperature. The hotter the weather, right, the more people consume ice cream and more people jump into the swimming pool. Another example is the fire size, the fires, so many fires every year, right? The more people, the more firefighters we send to the site, the more damage we can see in the later afterwards. Did the firefighters cause the damage? What's the third variable? Okay, the fire size, right? So we have a lot of examples. Another example is if you have 1,000 young people from 2 years old to 20, boys and girls, you measure the size of their feet and their intelligence. You find the larger the feet, the smarter they are. What's the third variable? The larger the feet, the smarter they are. What's the third variable? Age, right? Age, right? As long as we can find a third variable, okay, we cannot establish causal relation. So sociologists, if we want to find causal relation, although they cannot use the laboratory, control the extraneous variables or make sure that the independent variable happens before the dependent variable, they can use the third variable idea to generalize the idea of causal relation. Okay. Another final example, probably I've given you too many examples. Causal relation, right? The wages. I don't know what about Hong Kong, but in Buffalo, in New York, men and women. Okay, and we have several thousand people. Okay, we measure the height, and then measure the income. We found that the taller people are, the more income they make. Taller people make more money. Sounds like ridiculous, right? But that's true. Taller people really make more money. I think in Hong Kong too. In Hong Kong too. Okay, taller people make more money. What's the third variable? Gender, right, yeah. Men tend to be taller, men tend to make more money. Is that true in Hong Kong? Men make more money? Okay, yeah. So that's, as long as we can find third variable, we can not accept causal relation. To test causal relation, just remember two things. Okay, so we solve the problem. So I said earlier, preceding test and no third variable. Okay, two things. Now, as I said earlier, I'm going to use suicide and suicide research as an example to use sociology to understand the social world. Okay, sociology, you know Durkheim, all sociologists know Durkheim. He's one of the three greatest sociologists and founders of sociology. One of his famous, he has 4 areas of study. One of them is suicide. He had a book, Suicide, Sociological Study. And he used the inductive approach for theoretical conceptualization. Okay, he used quantitative, not qualitative to do the unit of analysis, to use logical analysis, and use quantitative to test his theory. Okay, and probably you know his theory is the social integration theory. Social integration theory, that's Durkheim's theory. And he argued that the reason why some people are more likely to die of suicide than others is those people who are not married, who are not employed, who do not go to church, who do not have a family, who do not have a kind of a friends, right? So he's very smart. So in sociology, we always talk about the sociological imagination. Durkheimianism is a perfect illustration of a sociological imagination, right? With so many different observations, Durkheim is very smart. Observation, he can pick up the commonality of so many things. Okay, married, employed, church, friends, and so on and so forth, family, right? So what's the commonality? Those people who are married, who have a family, who are employed, who go to church, are less likely to die of suicide. He said the commonality is the social integration. The reason why so many people die of suicide is that they are in the lack of social integration. Okay, that's a example. That's the example. However, okay, Durkheim just talk about when a person thinks about suicide, the social environment, social integration, either prohibit him from killing himself or encourage him to kill himself, right? So social integration is kind of facilitator, not the cause. And Durkheim never talks about the cause of suicide. He never tells us why some people think about suicide, right? Only after somebody thinks about suicide, if the person doesn't have a good social integration or social support, okay, the person can go to suicide, right? But he never talks about what happens before the person thinks about suicide. So that was Emile Durkheim missing. Okay, lack of social integration and suicidality. So we have to think about it. Okay, no theory is perfect, right? The reason why we do research is that we want to use research to modify research, to change theory, to modify, to revise theory. So about 10 years ago, I started research in China, three provinces, Hunan, Liaoning, and Shandong, 16 counties, rural counties. Then about 20 years ago, Chinese suicide rate was very high. Okay, out of 100,000 population, 23 people died of suicide, 20 years ago. But now, significantly low. Do you know the suicide rate in China now? Out of 100,000 population per year, from 6 to 8. Used to be 23, but now 8. Right? Significant decrease of the suicide rate in China. What happened? So we're trying to explain it. But I started my research, suicide research, not when the suicide rate dropped. When the suicide rate was a peak, 23 out of 100,000 population every year, right? And I use US NIMH grants, several million US dollars. But then US government is very friendly to China. So I was Chinese and I applied for money, and they're very happy to give me the money to conduct research in China. But today, it's not possible. Okay, they do not let you to do it with China, and they think the Chinese people are taking advantage of them. That's okay. That's another topic. And I studied the suicide reasons. Then, suicide rate was the highest in rural than urban. Women higher than men. Okay, young women higher than older women. So Chinese rural young women, 3 variables in China: gender, age, and location. Right? That's the focus. Let's start them. And so we have psychological analysis studies. I have 3 big teams. Went to the countryside, went to the home, and interview. When the person died, we interview the families, their friends, the co-workers, the best friends, and the parents. Okay, we got a whole bunch of data, and we have 392 cases and 416 controls, case control study. And we found that psychological strain might be the cause of why they started to think about suicide. What is a strain? S-T-R-A-I-N, strain. Strain is different from stress. Stress is simple. Stress is one direction pressure. We all have stress. That's okay. We have pressure of study. We have pressure of making money. We have a pressure to raise kids. We have a lot of pressures. But pressure is not necessarily detrimental to us. But when you have 2 stresses, 2 pressures, the 2 pressures push you or pull you to different directions, you feel frustrated. So that's a strain. A strain consists of at least 2 stresses. Strain theory of suicide. Rural young women, they feel frustrated, okay, because they not only have the stress of their ancestors, their parents, their grandparents, about the failure of piety, about women's status in countryside. They also have another stress at school. School teachers told them, you're a girl, but you are not inferior to a boy, okay? And you can do whatever a boy can do. Equal pay for equal work, equality. But Confucianism is not equality. Confucianism is downplay the role of women. So this is one example, right? The young girl go to school, feel frustrated. That's one example, okay? Many other examples, such as the parents-in-law, mother-in-law, such as work, traditional ideas and modernity, things like that. When we have time, we have a lot more examples to illustrate this. Now let's talk about the theoretical foundation, the structure. String theory of suicide. First of all, negative life events. Okay, we sociologists, most of the sociologists are structuralists, right? We believe in Durkheimianism, social structure, right? Everybody lives in the social structure. Social structure shape our mentality. Social structure, right? So when a person thinks about suicide, we sociologists do not believe that person is problematic. That person is normal as you. Social structure environment, okay? Just like the Second World War, the Vietnam War, the American soldiers killed innocent children and women in mainline, right? Americans think that the boys, okay, the soldiers, animals, why did they kill them? Actually, Milgram, Harvard University professor, had a study, had an experiment, and he had the Bostonians, okay, young men, come here to his lab, tested them. He found that 60% of the regular men will do the same thing with a command, with an order, right? Social structure, social structure. So suicide, we do not believe any genetic or personality reasons. They're all consequence of environment, negative social factor, negative social event, negative life events. Negative life events, okay, too much causes psychological strain. Okay, strain. If we have a strong strain, they think about suicide. Right? On the way from the strain to suicide, if we have a good social support, family, counselors, friends, teachers, roommates, to comfort them, they may not die. They may not kill themselves. They probably will become better, right? So this is a route. This is a path from social structure to suicide. Now let me illustrate that strain. You see, so everybody is like here. Okay. It doesn't work on the screen, huh? So we're here, two forces, two stresses. When you are there, you feel uncomfortable. You feel tortured, torn away, right? Like this. That's a string, illustration of a string. Let's look at this small video to see whether you like it.
我太难了。
So this little dog experienced a psychological strain. This is a strain, okay? And when a person experiences this kind of situation, so only if the two forces, okay, the two, the boy and the girl, right? The owners of this dog, the parents of the dog, now, the parents, right? The dog does not want to give up any of them. Both of them right, both of them good, right? The dog was tortured. If the dog thinks that one of them is important than the other, the dog does not have a strain. So strain happens that both forces are equally important. Okay, psychological strain. The four sources of strain. Earlier we talked about the value strain. Then we have reality and aspiration strain. Then number 3 is relative deprivation strain. Then we have a coping strain. Nowadays we can, although we cannot say 100% of death coming from any of the four strains, but pretty much we can explain almost all suicide cases with a strain. That's why we need the psychological autopsy to study the life of the suicide before he died of suicide. Okay? And the value strain, two different values, two conflicting values. If you internalize both of them, you do not want to give up any of them, you feel strained, you feel tortured. Like a young person who joined a cult, C-U-L-T, cult, okay, a small religion. But the person strongly believes the cult beliefs and also internalized with the mainstream culture. A lot of times, mainstream culture has conflict with the cult beliefs. The person feels strained. Okay, and also in America, my children, you know, in America and also in Europe too, Chinese people who live there, the first generation of migration like me, right? The first generation. So when we were there, we were okay because we came from China. We know what China looked like, and we experienced the life in China. But our children didn't. Our children young. So psychopathologies are worse on our children than us. Younger people have more problems. I think in Hong Kong too, younger people have more kind of a frustration. If we test the depression, anxiety, and stress, younger Hong Kong people probably will score higher than older Hong Kong people. The same is true of Chinese immigrants in the US, right? You know, my children, now they're grown up, right? They have their own family and they have their children, they're okay. But when they went to high school, they always ask me, am I Chinese or American? I said, you are both. He said, no, I'm American. I said, why? Why? And my friend so and so, she's American. And I said, no, you're born in China, your parents are Chinese and you have Chinese names. And they asked me, can I have an English name? I said, it's up to you. But well, they asked me to join the American citizenship. And because they were born in China, right? And 2 years old, they moved over there, they still hold Chinese passport. And they want to become American. They said, all my friends are American citizens, and we are not. I said, before you two of them there, okay, the twins. I said, before you become 18 years old, I decide what to do. After 18 years old, and you decide. But now they're over 30, they still remain Chinese citizenship. Okay? So when they were younger, they have kind of a strain. They have an identity, okay, problem. But when they grow old, when they grow older, okay, that kind of attention diminished. Strain theory, okay, psychological strain. Younger people have a stronger strength than the older people. Not only in Hong Kong, and also the Chinese nationals in America. The second source of strength is discrepancies between aspiration and reality. We all aim high, but reality, some people's reality is very close to the aim, easy to get there. But some other people far away. If you do not have education, you want to be a millionaire. If you are born and raised in a very poor family, you do not have a kind of a capital. Your parents do not have a kind of a support, and you have to start, strive, struggle from the very beginning. You're a long way to go. But for a rich person, a Jewish boy, easy, right? So the larger the discrepancy between aspiration and reality, the stronger the strength. Aspiration strength. Okay? And some Chinese young people who were admitted to Peking University. I don't know Hong Kong U. I don't know many cases, and Peking University, and the second year, sophomore year, and they killed themselves. So psychological autopsies indicated that when they came to Peking University, they were the number one, okay, in their village, in their county. But entering Peking University, the whole class, they're all number ones, feel depressed. They still have that aspiration, want a number one, but your reality, no, you are not there, okay? So that's one of the reasons, right? And the third source of strain is relative deprivation or relative poverty. Poverty doesn't matter. Okay, Chinese people used to be very poor. Before they left Beijing for USA in 1986, before a lot of you were born, right? China was a third world country, very poor. All what I possessed as a personal property was my bicycle and my black and white TV. I was one of the richest person in Beijing. No private cars in 1986, right? I was one of the richest person. But when I went to New York, right, and I worked in New York, every day my income was $120 with the tips, right? In Beijing, my income was 1 year, 1 month, only $10, $10 US, 1 month. Very low income, okay? My monthly 96 Chinese yuan, equivalent of $10. 1 year I made 120. But in New York, I mean, one day I make 120. For the whole summer, I can make the income of my whole life in China, right? So that's the comparison. Then I was very happy, very excited. I thought I was the happiest person in the world. Okay, I didn't know why. I was so blessed to make so much money, right? So I was very happy. But now, Chinese students who go to New York, they do not have that kind of feelings because they left China, left Hong Kong, left Beijing, left Shanghai, almost the same over there. They do not have that kind of a comparison. So, relative deprivation. And then we can also use relative deprivation to explain why in New York, the homeless people and the millionaires polarized, right? Rich people and poor people. The suicide rates for the homeless and for the millionaires is the same. Can you imagine that? We cannot say the homeless people are higher risk of suicide. No. Okay, the same. Why? Relative deprivation. Millionaires want to be trillionaires, right? And the homeless people just want to have kind of a nice and comfortable shelter for the evening. you do not have that much expectations. Number 4 is coping skills. All of us have experienced crises, but most of us can go over the crisis easily. Coping skills, we can learn coping skills. The discrepancy between crisis and your capacity to deal with the crisis, the larger the discrepancy, the more strain you have. So those are the 4 psychological strains, 4 sources. Any questions? Yes, please.
Yeah, I have a question. So let's say how like structuralists, they don't take into account like genetics or personality, right? But don't these 4 strings also like can they be like modified by personality? Like I'm not a person who compare with others, so I would.
Very good question. This is what I'm going to talk about here.
Alright.
Here, okay, personality. And if we say just a psychological strain goes to suicide, that's too simple, right? We have to consider other factors, the environment, right? Moderators and the interveners. Here's interveners. Here are the moderators. Personality is here. Personality can moderate, okay, the route from a psychological strain to suicidality. And sometimes, if you experience the psychological strain, you do not kill yourself directly, right away, right? You come to depression, psychopathologies. Then from psychopathologies, accumulated too much psychopathology, then you kill yourself. So moderators and interveners. Any other questions? Now we have instruments, scales, to measure each of the 4 strains: value strain, aspiration strain, deprivation strain, and coping strain. We have a scale of 40 items, 10 for each strain. They're all validated in many samples, including China and the USA. Questions? So this is a further exploration of the relationship between the psychological strain and the suicidality. You see, here psychological strain, but before psychological strain, of course, we have negative life events, lack of social integration, and then suicide, right? In Chinese, see, necessary condition and a sufficient condition. We can also use the 2 concepts. Okay, something that happens in the 2 conditions. Okay, like a fire. Necessary condition is a flammable material, such as wood. But only necessary condition, not enough. We need the necessary condition and needed sufficient condition. Sufficient condition is lightning, right? Without lightning, you have only necessary condition. That's not enough. Sufficient. So necessary condition is a psychological strain. Sufficient condition is a lack of social integration. So I think we use the sociological way to set up a suicide model like this. Some examples. Now, this is psychological strain. Strain theory of suicide is kind of a significant intervention in treatment. As long as we know that the person is suicidal, as long as we know the reason is the psychological strain, the person is frustrated because of some negative life event. Okay, that's an upstream reason. We can go there. We can solve the problem at the beginning. Okay, and if we just treat depression, the person is depressed, they give him some antidepressant medication. Not enough. Okay, the person had antidepressant medication feels better. Then the problem is not solved. You know, SSRI, I don't know how many of you know that. That's a very Pfizer medication to take care of depression, SSRI. But American psychiatrists, when they prescribe SSRI on the bottle of the medication, they always have a label. Parents, be careful. Okay, your case after SSRI has a risk of suicide. Okay, the boy is very depressed. But when the boy had the antidepressant becomes cheerful, the person thinks about suicide. What's the relationship between depression and suicide? Depression and suicide, highly correlated, but there's no causal relation. Highly correlated. In the US, about 80% of the suicide, before they die, they were diagnosed as major depression or other mental disorder. Right? In China, 50%, 49 or 50% of Chinese suicide could be diagnosed with the mental disorder, major depression. So anyway, depression is a major correlation with the suicide. Is a causal relation? Highly correlated. Is a causal relation. Depression caused the suicide? Two tests. One is a preceding test, the other no third variable test. Preceding, of course, the person becomes depressed first, right? But two tests must be passed. Okay, only one test is passed, not enough. Both tests must be passed. The second test is no third variable that causes both of them. What's the third variable that causes both depression and suicide? What's the third variable? What's the third variable that causes both of them? Psychological strain causes suicide. Psychological strain also causes depression. Right? So they are highly correlated. Not because they have causal relation, because of a strain. Strain is the third variable that causes both of them. So in psychological counseling, in treatment, we have to remember this. To solve the problem, take care of the strain. First of all, to find what kind of a strain it is. Where did the person get the strain? And then reduce the strain. Strain reduction theory. Okay, so we have to use the psychological strain theory of suicide to develop kind of a methodology to treat the suicidal people. So the treatment, the method is called strain reduction therapy, SRT. SRT now is underdeveloped at the Shandong University based on this theory. But nowadays in the US, probably I didn't tell you that in the past 20 years, past 20 years, Chinese suicide rate dropped significantly from 23 to 8. But in US, America, in the past 20 years, suicide rate went up from 11 to 15. You know how much money American government, US government spend on suicide prevention? Okay? The suicide rate didn't respond to the financial support, to the funding. Still went up significantly from 11 to 15. So when I talked to them at the conference, I told them that psychiatrists in the US, NIMH, so most of those scientists were working on the wrong direction. They were working on the wrong target. The methods are not valid because they are working on depression. They think that depression is the cause of suicide. They work on the depression to reduce the suicide, to reduce depression in order to reduce the suicide rate. It didn't work. Right? Still, it went up. But in China, not so many psychiatrists really take care of depression. Not so many depressed Chinese really go to the mental disorder professionals to get treated. But the rate went up, came down. It's not depression. Depression is the comorbidity of suicide. Like running a fever, and a headache. Headache and a fever go together. There's no causal relation. The comorbidity. Third variable is the flu. The flu caused both of them. Depression and suicide go together, highly correlated. Depression is not the cause of suicide. Just like fever and headache, right? If you treat depression, it doesn't work, cannot reduce suicide rate. So Americans, okay, in the world, also Europeans, right? They are treating suicidality the wrong way, okay? They strongly believe that depression is the cause of suicide. Actually, it's not. They're working in the wrong direction. They're working on the wrong target. Suicide, okay? Psychological strength reduction. For example, two conflicting values. In order to reduce the strain of a young person, you take away one of the value or reduce the degree of one of the values. When a person has a discrepancy between reality and aspiration, you encourage the person, the young people, to work hard, to get ahead, try your best to reach the goal. Okay, sleep less, get up early, work harder. Or if the person cannot do that, another way is to reduce the discrepancy between aspiration and reality is lower your goal. Many people don't like the idea of lowering the goal, especially parents. Okay, her son wants to go to Peking University, Hong Kong U, and you said that's too hard. Okay, let's lower. Let's go to Lingnan University. That's good enough, right? And some people say that you're not encouraging my children to go higher, right? So, but between success and the life, which is more important? Over 30 years ago, when I first came to New York to work, and then about 30, 80 years ago, AIDS was so prevalent in America. It was not so serious in China. We just heard the name of AIDS, HIV virus. And in Manhattan, high schools, they had kind of a policy. 3 o'clock in the afternoon, before the high school kids went home, every child has to go through the exit door with a big basket. There are condoms there. Students are free to pick up condoms and bring condom home because it was very, very threatening, the AIDS virus, HIV. So parents are protesting. They said, my children too young, only 16 or 14. Why you encourage them to have sex after school? You're ridiculous. They were protesting. But statesman on TV, telling the whole New Yorkers that the final line is, between your child's morality and life, which is more important? Okay, not here. Between success and life, which is more important? So sometimes we have to reduce the aspiration, the goal, to lead a happy life. Happiness is more important than success. Relative deprivation. Change your reference. You do not compare you with some people richer. You compare yourself with somebody who is poorer. You change your reference. You change your comparisons. Then you feel better. After you have a test, you got 80%, and your friend got a 95%, you do not feel good. If your next door neighbor got a 75, you feel much better, right? So change reference will change your perception. So you can voluntarily, so after you learn the string theory of suicide, you can be your own counselor. You can also counsel other people, and then also you can also your own counselor. Crisis and deficiency in coping with the skills, the crisis, to learn more. improve yourself. Okay, now let's talk about suicide rates. I mentioned some earlier. This is the world WHO data. Okay, over the world, it used to be 1 million people die by suicide every year, but 20 or 30 years ago. But now, 800,000. Okay, 20% decrease. The whole world suicide rate. What happened? The world people are less likely to die by suicide? Okay, now, if you really want to know the answer, know the statistics, you look at the China statistic book, right? In China suicide rate used to be out of 100,000 population, 23 people die by suicide every year, but now 8. So when China's suicide rate was 23 every 100,000 population per year, that is the total suicide number of people, the 300,000. Okay, 300,000 every year, but now less than the 100,000 every year. The whole world used to be 1 million, now 800,000. The whole world lost 200,000. China also lost 200,000. 200,000 death less. The world 200,000 less. So China contributed to the drop of suicide rate. That's not important. The important is why. What did Chinese people do to have such a significant drop of suicide rate? That's what we want to know. So we use the string theory of suicide to make an explanation. The bottom line is simply speaking, is the Chinese people had less strain than they had before. Why? Economic growth, economy. Okay, this is another picture of the US from 11 to 15 US. Okay, suicide rate. From 1999 to 2017, 5 years ago, or 6 years ago. China, okay, used to be 23, but now 8. Some figures, if you're interested. Now, Michael Phillips, I don't know whether you know Michael Phillips, the name. He's a good scholar. He's a Canadian. He works in Shanghai. And this is what he made, the table. He studied from 1990 to 2019, the statistics, all the indicators of mental disorders, including suicide rate, anxiety, mental disorder, substance abuse, depression, and alcohol use. Okay, for the 30 years, over the 30 years, everything else remained the same. Remained the same. Only suicide dropped. Suicide dropped. Okay. What happened? Why? So some people say that depression is the cause of the suicide. If the depression dropped, the suicide also dropped. But the suicide didn't drop. Depression didn't drop. Here's the depression. Remain the same. So this is another indicator that depression is not the cause of the suicide. Some people say that the Chinese people focus on the mental disorder and more psychiatrists work in the countryside. No. Okay. This is the comparison of Chinese psychiatrists and the world. The world average, including the third world countries, including Africa. The whole world, out of 100,000 population, 2.96, almost 6 psychiatrists. But in China, only 2.6. Much lower than the world average. That's China. But Hong Kong probably much higher. Hong Kong probably much higher than 3.96. Every 10,000 population. Okay? Not because China had more psychiatrists. Okay? And this is the increase of the number of psychiatrists in China, but not that much significant. The growth of number of psychiatrists is much slower than the drop of suicide rates in China. Now, what's the cause? We use the string theory of suicide to explain high and low now. We use the string theory of suicide to make comparisons between China and the rest of the world. Economy. Economy is the only most observable factors we can see. See, here's economic growth since 1985, since the beginning of the economic reform, goes up. Now, suicide rate goes down. Strain, economic growth, Chinese rural young women had more opportunities, better lives. They're free from home, from the rural areas. They can go to cities to work. Now, 打工 is also English word now. So, the relationship with the parents-in-law is not that serious anymore because culture changed. A lot of the problems which used to be serious in rural China now is not that important because of the economy, because of better life. Now look at the two pictures. Before I went to the US, I worked in the countryside, send down youth, send down, right? All high school kids must be sent down to the rural areas to learn from the peasants. You know that? Send down, okay. Summer, I taught students like this. No classroom. Air conditioning, no. Don't mention that. Even no classroom. In the open, those kids, some of them even don't have good shoes. The tables and chairs, stone, right? Guess what? 20 years later or 30 years later, those kids move to the city like this. Big change for them. You think they in the cities want to die by suicide? Just like me, came from Beijing, okay? 96 Chinese yuan every month, $120 US per day. Okay, in that kind of a change, do you think I had a good reason to kill myself? Do you think that they had a good reason to kill themselves? Right, economic change. Another reason for mainland China suicide rate reduction is the counseling, the work. All the university campuses are very serious about it, especially the administrators. They're very serious about every single case of suicide on campus. So they have a whole bunch of staff members to take care of the psychological conditions of the students. I don't know Hong Kong U, the students also monitored by the staff members, but in China, every campus, all students are monitored. Okay, some of them even have kind of a ring like this. So the central computer room monitors the movement of every student. If that ring didn't move in 24 hours, the counselor will come to the dorm to see what's happening. Okay, so things like that. Okay, surveillance. So efficient way to reduce the suicide rate in the general population. Psychological strain reduction. Reduce strain is the key. Not take care of depression. Depression is related, but just like fever and headache. If you take care of fever, headache is still there. If you have painkiller to reduce the headache, fever probably still there. The comorbid, depression and suicidality, comorbid. If you take just the depression, suicide is still there. Okay, so antidepressant, counselor, just to work so far, just work on the superficial level of the problem. For example, a person have lost $40,000. Okay, because of a business, okay? The person cannot go home afraid because he lost all the properties of his family and want to die, okay? And the psychiatrist got him and gave him some antidepressant and feels better. But when the medication is over, the person thinks about the $40,000. So the doctor, psychiatrist cannot bring the $40,000 back to the man. If you cannot bring the $40,000 back to the man, you cannot solve the problem. If you cannot solve the problem, you cannot help him at all, right? It's very simple. Reduction, you have to talk to him. 40,000 is not enough. It is not that important. Life is long. You compare with others who lost 1 million, right? You tell the person a story, okay? A more sad story. So comfort him. So somebody had involved in a car accident and very depressed, and probably the person lost one of the limbs, very depressed. He always thinks that, oh, why? In the same car and anybody else is okay, but me, okay, just have to maim one leg. Well, the counselor, right, if you have learned strain reduction theory, you should go tell him that compare yourself with Diana, Princess Diana. Who also involved in a car accident. He lost her life. She lost her life. You're lucky, you're still alive. Change the person's reference, right? Change the person's story. So when you feel sad, when you feel bad, okay, you just think about somebody who's not as good as you. You feel comfortable. RQ, right? You know RQ, right? 鲁迅 RQ. Works. RQ's theory sometimes it works. Change your reference, you can change your perception. Change your reference, change your perception. Other people's misfortune is the best cure for your own bad luck. Got it? If you're unlucky, you lost something, and you were told a story that somebody else lost more, you feel better. When you go to the hospital to see your grandmother's terminally ill. The best gift for her is not a flower, is not kind of a pastry, not money, not anything. The best gift to her is a story telling her that your friend, the same age, or younger than you, already passed away. 5 years ago, you're good, you're better. Your mother, your grandmother likes to hear that, and she feels much better, right? To change the reference, you can change people's perception. That's the foundation of the strain reduction theory. Yes, please.
Do you mind if I ask a question about gender?
Gender, yes.
Yeah. In your graphs, you've shown that women had a higher rate of suicide in China, but then that's changed, and now men have a higher rate.
Yes.
And that matches what's happening in the rest of the world, where men have a higher rate of suicide. In the context of what you're elaborating, is that because men are under greater strain, or is it that men are worse at managing the strain, which might lead to the higher levels?
Okay. So 20 years ago, 30 years ago, women had a stronger strain, but now their strain is reduced. Right? Men probably remain the same. You know, in Asia, Korea, Taiwan, Hong Kong, Japan, gender ratio is very close to 1. But in Europe, gender ratio is 3 or 4 to 1. Very close, Asian people. But 20 years ago, gender ratio for Chinese suicide rate was 0.8. Women more, okay, but now reduced. Okay, women significantly reduced. So now 1.2 now. Gender ratio is 1.2. Okay. So one reason is that women less likely to kill themselves, but men remain pretty much the same. So, 3-level prevention of suicide. For those of you who study the public health, you know the 3 levels: primary and secondary and tertiary. Okay, and strain reduction theory works on the primary level of prevention. To work with the general population, we have to work with the general population to reduce the psychological strain. Like prevent people from catching COVID. So in the past 3 years, the medical staff and the professionals work on the primary level of prevention. Everybody has to wear masks, right, from the very beginning. Suicide too. When a person sits on the windowsill, ready to jump, the firefighters, the air cushions don't work. Okay, that's the final, that's the tertiary prevention. That doesn't work. We need to work from the very beginning, reduce the psychological strain of the individuals. Questions, please.
Thank you very much, Professor Zhang. I'm always very happy when during the methods of presentation we talk about theory, because we don't talk about theory much in methods, and we should. We have some time for questions.
Yes.
As Professor Zhang said.
For each of the talk, I think QA section is more important than a presentation. I said the challenging questions,
No,
smashing criticism.
I just would like to ask about the prevention on the primary. You said that the measure should be on the SRT, and I think is that popular in China, or is that, I mean, the awareness, that means the people really realize of this theory, or just is in a, I mean, in kind of only happens in the professionalist. And also the second question is about, I'm not sure whether you know much about Hong Kong, but I would like to ask if is it work for Hong Kong, or maybe how can the society can make some changes? Because in my observation, I feel like in foreign countries they are much more concerned about I mean, sometimes you can see there is a quote like, it's okay to be not okay, but it seems that it's less likely to spread in the Asian countries. Yes.
So you mean, what's the special for Hong Kong?
Yes, kind of.
The difference between Hong Kong and other societies in Asia and the Europeans?
Yes.
Okay. So what can we do in Hong Kong?
Yes.
I think the string theory of suicide and the strain reduction therapy can be applied anywhere,
Yeah.
including Hong Kong.
But how was the promotion? I mean, how to
Proportion?
promotion?
How to promote strength.
Promote.
Yes.
Well, that is related to the health bureau, the public health department, and also at the university level, the administration has to do something. Like mainland China, the administration spend a lot of money and energy on the grassroots level to prevent, to monitor, to follow every single student. In China, at the freshmen, when they came September, every September, they have to go through a screening survey.
Oh, okay.
Screening survey to find out, identify those people who are higher risk.
Okay.
They follow them for 4 years.
Okay, good.
But you know, a lot of the times, those people who follow, okay, graduated, but they didn't. Some suicide were not followed by them. They didn't find them at the beginning. So I told them that the screening, the instrument was problematic, not good enough.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, please.
So just questions right now. So do the 4 strains identify, for example, first by qualitative study, like just by interviewing, and then you identify commonalities in those cases, such that you summarize for.
We had two basic papers published 2014 English, and we talked about the whole procedure.
Yeah.
And we had a whole bunch of public health and sociologists that get together and offer the questions. And with the fact analysis, we used to have over 100 items. We reduced to 60 reduced to 40.
Right.
Okay, we finalized with the 40. If you're interested, and I have my email, you email me, I'll give you the paper and also the instrument, 40 items. But now we're working on the reduction of 40 items to 20, because a lot of surveys, 40 is too many, too time consuming. So I can share that with you. If you're interested, you can do some preliminary test, okay? Some small sample.
And is there any strain is more prominent or more influential than the others, among the 4 strings?
Who?
Among the 4 type of strings,
Yeah.
is do they have the same effect on the individual, or is there any one of them which is more influential, more suicide inducing?
Oh, okay. You mean all the 40 items, right?
No, for the 4 type of strings.
Oh, well, different, right? Different. The most, I think the people in China and the US, score the highest is the relative deprivation. Relative deprivation is the usually score high. And in some samples, the discrepancy between reality and aspiration. Value is not that high. Coping scale is also high. But the most important is aspiration between aspiration and reality. It all depends on different samples. Yes.
Hi, Zhang. Can you please maybe elaborate a little bit more on the difference between working the methods of working on the strings and the typical methods you mentioned, in America, the psychiatrists directly working on depression. What's the difference between these?
The difference between two what?
The method of working on strings of changing people's perspectives.
Okay. Oh.
Yeah.
Okay. So now not only Americans, the whole world, they use the therapy method, which is called the DBT and the CBT. CBT is a cognitive behavioral therapy, right? DBT is the dialectic behavior therapy, right? The 2 ways, they're all created by Americans. Okay, and they have cognitive, and they want to change people's thinking, cognitive. Okay, each of them is a book, right? Very complicated. They have to train the psychiatrists, to train the counselors to do it. Okay, for every session, long time, right? Very time consuming and very expensive. But the point is that it didn't work that well. That's why we want to try the psychological strain, strain reduction therapy.
Also, for their methods, they do not work on the strings, but directly trying to do it.
So they do not have the concept of strain. That's why. They don't know what a strain is.
So
They don't worry about a strain.
So-
They just worry about a psychological problem. So people have different psychological problem. I don't know how they deal with all types of psychological problem. They strongly believe in individual differences, individual characteristics. They do not care about society, the social factors. They are not sociologists. We are sociologists. We know all the problem comes from society, comes from social structure. Okay, we work on the social structure. No individuals. All individuals are a consequence of the social world, environment, society. We, sociology, this is a sociological method, but there is a psychological method. I really want to hope that the strain reduction therapy works better and it can take care of more, to be more efficient in the suicide prevention in the world, I hope. And also need the help from you guys.
Thank you for the very interesting talk. So I would like to ask two questions. The first one is from your observations, what kind of decision-making process do people usually go through when they are thinking about committing suicide? Do they usually make a very long-winded, very long-winded, pros and cons, weighing up all the pros and cons, and then they decide that, okay, I will do it? Or is it usually more of a case of an impulsive decision?
Very few impulsive suicide, not many. In 20 years ago in rural China, some women had impulsive suicide, impulsivity. So I had some cases, but most of them are calculated for a long time. Suicide, definition of a suicide by Durkheim is that the behavior conducted by the person himself, number one. Number two is that the person knows clearly the consequence of this behavior is death. Okay? Physician-assisted suicide is not suicide because the person didn't do it by himself, right? And some people walk on the roof of the high building and had a dream, I want to see God, I want to talk to God, and walk, and jumped, killed. He didn't know, okay, the consequence of his behavior is death. That's not suicide. So suicide must meet two factors, two conditions. The person knows that the person did it by himself, right? Most suicides are calculated. Most of it rational. I said suicide behavior is a rational behavior. You must acknowledge the suicide is a rational behavior. If you do not think a rational behavior, you cannot take care of suicide, you cannot save lives. People randomly die of suicide, okay? That's not suicide, you cannot help him. Calculation, rational choice, through exchange theory. The person realizes that the death is much more rewarding than continuing to live. Lost money, lost wife or husband, lost everything, cannot continue life anymore. Or a lot of pain, physical pain, right? Mafia, no medication can help. Torture, it's better to die, right? Psychological pain, cannot sleep, cannot eat, okay? Would rather die, cannot suffer it anymore. Death is a solution, calculation, rational choice.
And I have a second question. So I think I often hear that suicide can be contagious.
Right.
Is that true from your observation?
Yes, that's true. That's
Okay.
true. Leslie Chang, right? That is the first name, Zhang Jie, first name. Huh? Right. Yeah, he died in 2014, right? Something like that, April 1st, right? 1 week after that day, many young people in Hong Kong jumped. Contagious. Copycat suicide.
Thank you.
But those young people who kill themselves after Leslie Chang that's also rational behavior. Because accumulated for a long time, those young people didn't want to live anymore. That's the chance. He is brave, we have to learn from him. He got released, I will get released too, right? Normal kids do not do that, right? Normal kids do not do that. Only after a long time of calculation, long time torture, problem for a long time, those people behave like this.
I have a question. Because you think you from your observation that they are making the decision for a long time, but why don't they seek help or why sick help is useless?
Huh?
Do you think that they will seek help because you said it's a rational behavior
Yeah.
for doing the suicide? So why don't they try to make the social integration better?
Social integration, right?
Yes.
Yeah, they cannot help. They cannot too much. They cannot help themselves. Too much pain, right? They cannot get help. They do not want to get help. They want to die. After death, they feel comfortable. Especially for some religious people, they go to God. They go to heaven. Right? So most of them won't get help. Not very few people think that death is better than life. Only this life is too torturous, too bad, unbearable. Then this life have to be given up. If the life is not that bad, nobody wants to give up on that life. Very few. Okay, suicide bombers. Suicide bombers, right? Okay, that's a suicide, that's altruistic suicide. Durkheim had 4 types of suicide. Egoistic suicide, altruistic suicide, fatalistic suicide, anomic suicide. Suicide bombers, altruistic suicide, die for others. Those people are normal. Those people look normal, but they also have a frustration, psychological strains, or economic strains, or strain with God. They also have a problem like that. Because not everyone can become suicide bombers. No, not everyone. Right? In traditional Indian society, we know sati, S-U-T-T-E-E. You know that, right? They're not doing that anymore. Right? At the funeral of the husband, the widow climbed onto the pyre and jumped to the fire to die together with her husband. That's altruistic suicide. But not all women do that. Only those women who identify themselves with the family, right? Loyal to the husband. And that was considered to be pro-social behavior, right? Am I right? I'm not quite sure.
It's high-cost women, so women of...
High class, you see, high class. Okay, upper scale. See, that's altruistic suicide. Identify themselves with the family. Okay? And in wartime, martyrs, they know if they jump out of the trench, they will die. They did that anyway. That's suicide. Right? But all people did that.
I have a question. I wonder if the suicide rate among students in China also declined, or if there is a rising trend of suicide rate among Chinese students recently. Because, you know, from the media report, we can see more and more reports about students kill themselves. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So that's a question frequently asked, right? And let me tell you this: in China, college students' suicide rate is much lower than average. Okay, Chinese suicide, let's say 800,000 population. 2 Chinese universities will account 100,000. Tsinghua and Peking University, 100,000. But there are 8 suicides every year. No, at most 2 or 3. Much lower than the average. But why we heard so many? Because that's exposable. Okay, people like to know, and college students, so that's a discrimination. College students' life more valuable, right? If a rural a farmer died of suicide, nobody cares, nobody reports, but college students, so everybody reports that. So that's why we know more, but actually not more. Yeah, you.
I appreciate that you say sociology theory is very important for helping to lower the suicidal rate. But I have another theory, is that I don't think the Chinese government, they are raising the financial just to aim at suicidal rate. But that it happens, and that's why the suicidal rate lowers. I can see that those strain reduction interventions are very helpful, but I don't know if people can wait that long for that kind of change to happen in general. And that's why what I say is I can still see the importance of why some people will aim at people with mental illness or whatsoever. Because you can't wait for the whole society to become richer, or because even in China, I think most parents, they are still aiming very high at their children. If you don't work on the psychological interventions and wait until they change their concept or change their way of seeing things, I don't know. I just think that both needs to be done hand to hand, and not just emphasize one is more helpful than the other or whatsoever.
Yeah, I agree with you. Psychologists, no, we do not say they have not done anything. Right? Psychologists also help, but usually cannot solve the basic problem. So sociology want to find the upstream reasons. Want to stop like a long river, right? Like a river, right? Downstream contaminated water. If we just take care of the contaminated water here, it doesn't work because the dirt still comes from there. We have to go upstream to stop the dirt over there. So sociology is doing this. But when the dirt comes to the downstream, probably psychiatrists and psychologists, social workers can take care of that, right?
Because,
so all theories work.
Because what I heard you say, what are the interventions that can be helpful? If I'm the client, that I have a suicidal idea, I think I will be minimized. If I
Who
put
minimizes
myself, if my psychologist is telling me that, oh, you're aiming too high. If you aim lower, then it will be okay. I don't think that kind of words will be helpful when the person is already having a high risk of suicide. That feels really minimizing, and I don't feel I will feel more comfortable after hearing those words.
Well, probably the psychiatrist and the psychologist didn't do a good job in talking to you about that. There are a lot of nice ways to comfort you, to let you feel comfortable. But the stress reduction therapy is to change your reference, to change your comparative reference, then to reduce your stress, your tension, your pressure, your strain.
What I think is what you mentioned is something that is more applicable to the general public.
Yes.
But still, to certain population, just those generalized interventions won't help much.
Well, 3 levels, right? Primary and tertiary and secondary. We use different methods, right? At a tertiary level of prevention, we cannot use this anymore. We have to save life.
Yeah. If you present like that, I will feel a more balanced way.
It's almost time, but I just want to get one question in before we finish. Just come back to the gender difference question.
Okay, gender. Okay.
So I remember reading about suicide attempts. So in the West, women are higher risk of attempting suicide.
Attempt more, but
and
less.
men are more successful.
Yes.
So once you take into account suicide attempts and suicide, not success, but suicide, actual suicides, that the gender difference is reduced.
In the world, for every suicide there are 20 attempts. So that's the general figure. In the world, women more likely to attempt, but the men are more likely to die. One reason is that determination of men. If they want to die, they want to die. But for women, probably, so some of them, okay, so I want to be politically correct, right? Some of them use a suicide attempt as a weapon to gain something. They may not really want to die. It's one of the reasons, right? Some women don't like that. That's okay. Another thing is that the men are more likely to use lethal methods, such as guns, such as jumping. Women are less likely to use guns because a lot of women, not all, right, don't get offended. Some women, they want to die, when they die, they do not use a gun because they do not want to disfigure. People will view their body at a funeral. They do not want to jump because you're disfigured, right? They use kind of mild, such as swallowing some poison medication. So those are the studies from America. I don't know whether that's true in Hong Kong, in China, I don't know. But those are the observations, gender difference, a whole bunch of gender differences of suicide. So attempts and death of a suicide, means of suicide, and depression. Women are more likely to be depressed, but women are less likely to die of a suicide. You see the depression of a suicide, what's the relationship? If there's a stronger causal relation, women should die more, right? But, you know.
On that note, I'd like to thank Professor Zhang again. It's a very inspiring talk.